Are we live? Are we live? Are we live?
I'm walking alone, the streets empty. The only thing I can see is my own silhouette. I'm getting stronger, step by step. Clock is ticking, but there's no time for me. I've been flying from town to town, from London to Taiwan. I've been all around the globe trying to protect your soul. We are heroes.
So guys, hello and welcome to DSC-VIT's premiere podcast. Today we have 4 generations of DSC-VIT Android developers here with us today. Guys, let's just introduce ourselves. I'll go first. I'm Amog. I'm a full stack developer who started his journey with Android development and slowly moved on to other technologies like Flutter and backend development.
My name is Siddharth, and I'm also an Android developer. Actually, I started with Flutter and then moved to native Android. Also, I'm a full stack developer, so I know a bit of backend too.
Hello, my name is Ritik Jain. I'm a second year student and I'm a mobile full stack developer. I started off with native Android and moved on to Flutter also.
Hey guys, my name is Ashwan Narayan. I just graduated from VIT this year, and I'm working in a company called Zomato as an Android developer. I learned native Android development. I've been doing native Android development, and that's about it.
So guys, you mentioned that you started off with something and then moved on to something else, but Yashwant, you started with it and kept at it. So I think that contrasts a bit on how our paths actually um, diverged and we went ahead with what our choices were. Maybe you could explain why you chose to stay on something, or maybe why you chose the next technology that you learned, how you started actually. Yashwant, I think since you're the most senior one of us here, you could answer this question.
So, compared to Ritik or Siddhartha, I haven't drifted a lot in my choices. The thing is, I started with web dev and stuff, and then we later moved on to Android development. Seemed a bit what to say, it has a lot of depth to be covered, and it had a lot of challenges in it, I felt, compared to other things. And then I sticked on to that. But then I did get to know about Flutter and React Native, like the alternatives of native, that you can also build apps through those frameworks and stuff. I haven't actually gone that because I've been getting a lot of native things one year, and I didn't really get a chance or a use case for me to move on to the hybrid frameworks like Flutter or React Native. Maybe Siddhartha or Ritik can share their experiences on this.
Yeah, so in my case, actually, I went to DEF CON Bangalore, and then that's where I got to know about Flutter. Before that, I was doing a bit of web development, and it seemed too much to take in. So then I started Flutter, and I really liked the declarative syntax and like writing UI as code. So I like started from there and then moved a little bit onto native. So in my case, I found Flutter to be a little more discouraging and like harder to learn because like there wasn't any resources available.
So for me, I was always sort of into tech. I like tech a lot. So in my 12th grade, I was exploring some different technologies. So I came across Android and I installed Android Studio and made my first app. And the feeling of making an app was totally amazing, and it made you feel superior in a way. So I went and showed my parents the first app I made, and then they were like, "Oh wow, this is great." So it just feels good to make an Android app. And from then, my journey escalated since I joined DSC-VIT. So I got to work on a lot of Android projects here.
So what?
Amog, how did you get into Android?
Right. So my experience was slightly different compared to you guys. Like I was originally into Android OS development, if that's a thing. So I used to like build custom ROMs or custom Android distributions from source, and from there I got interested in apps, and that's how my journey actually began in my first year.
Oh, that's really great and like most different from all of our journeys.
Yeah, I mean, it really contrasts on the ways that you can actually get into this amazing field. Like, there's no entry barrier. You can just do whatever you actually want to. Hey, that reminds me, you're talking about your first app. Guys, can you actually tell me what your first app was?
So let me start here. So okay, I'll say three apps. I mean, first in the sense I'm dividing into the exact very first app, and then the one first app which really got me interested and stuff like that. So the very first app, the very first project I ever created using Android Studio is a very small calculator app, and it doesn't have a lot of buttons. You just have to type in the numbers, and it has plus, minus, and equal and stuff like that. So it's a very small app, so as everyone does. And a slightly bigger one that I did is for a subject project in my second year first semester. It's a hostel grievance management system. Basically, we felt that in hostels, when you go and complain, they don't really care about that. So we thought maybe we can try to change that. Actually, that is a project where I got to learn a lot and I did a lot. It also has an interesting part where my friends and we decided that we told the teachers like we need more data, not just boys hostel data. We also need girls hostel data to build this product and all. And we were able to convince one teacher, but we were almost into the girls hostel. But then at the end of the day, they're like, "Nah, that's not happening, bro." So that happened, and then I got into DSC and did a lot of projects. So the first ever project which went to Play Store for me was DevFest 2018. So that was
So
pretty cool.
that's why
It's
you
like,
got into Android, right? To just get into the girls' hostel.
nah, no, no. That was just a side effect. Anyway, that didn't happen. That's a different case. But yeah.
What about you guys, Ritik and Siddharth? What was your first app? I remember mine being like a very crappy implementation of like a voice chat, which in which I put all the code in like the main activity. The main activity is like a screen. Each activity is a screen in an Android app. So I just put all the code in the single screen, and there's more than 1,000 lines in there.
I mean, that's all of us. Like that's how all of us start, right? In one file. And yeah, so in my case, the first app was a basic quiz app that I made. It wasn't anything great. So yeah, not anything special for me. Not like going to the girls' hostel for my apps.
Yeah, so all of you have so many interesting stories. My first app was a simple voice looping app, which allowed you to loop multiple tracks of audio at the same time. And again, for me also, it was like I put all the code inside the main activity file. Yeah, so that's where all of us start, I guess.
That's interesting. Voice looping. Could it be that you used it for beatboxing?
Yes, that was the main purpose for it.
So, guys, if you don't know, Ritik here is like a super good beatboxer, and if you could show us and our audience, that would be cool.
Sure. I'll drop something.
Wow,
Wow.
that was so cool actually. How long have you been beatboxing?
I can say now it has been about 4 years.
Right. So, mhm. So guys, actually, if you want to check out more of Ritik's beatboxing, go and check out our Android Study Jams podcast, where Ritik beatboxes in every break to keep you entertained. So that's a surefire win for you as well. Moving on. Um, why did you actually get into Android? Can you tell us a bit more about that? I mean, I told you already, like it was because I was into Android OS development. What about you guys? What's your story?
But you did not mention why you were in Android OS development. So like
Right. Okay.
that's
Okay.
very
Let's explain a bit more about that. So, at that time, I had like a really cheap phone, and cheap phones, they don't actually get any Android version updates. So, my main motivation was to actually be on the latest version of Android, which was Android 7 at that time. So, my friend actually taught me how to do this, and I started building these custom ROMs by myself, and I got hooked onto it. And basically, that's where my journey began.
oh, that's pretty cool. So like I guess you all have had some work experiences. So Amuk, can you tell about some of your experiences, or like how difficult or easy is it to get a job in this field, or like an internship of sorts?
Right. So I haven't actually had any job, so I leave that to Yashwant after I talk my part. But I personally have been involved in quite a few freelance projects that I've been working on. So one thing that I found is the most contrasting between freelance jobs and actual companies building their apps is that freelancers typically want to get their stuff done cheap, right? I mean, it's natural. So they typically want to go for like a hybrid framework like Flutter or React Native. And the reason is like they don't want to write the same code twice, or rather they don't want to build the same app twice, because that just leads to more developers, more debugging, more headache, basically. So they just want to have a single code base for multiple different platforms. So that's the one thing I've noticed in my experience as working as a mobile dev. What about you, Yashwant? You've been working in the industry. What are your thoughts?
There are a lot of questions going on over here. So let me start from the first thing. The thing is, getting into this field is like it starts from the thing is the Android development has the steepest ever learning curve you could ever have seen any other technology, I'd say. Uh, so for that, people need to have some kind of what to say, a belief in you that you would be able to work in the scale that they've been working. So you have to start your journey beforehand. Like if you're in a college student, the first year or second year, it'll be great to start at that point if you feel like you really want to go into under development stage. And so the thing is, you might start off with a couple of small projects. As we all told, we used to start with small projects, right? So that is not a big thing. And slowly, you should aim to put at least one app in Play Store. That would really help you. You have no idea how that would make a huge difference. Even if it's a very small app, if you have one app in Play Store, that will be awesome. And then as you move on, just keep making a lot of apps. Sure, you need to showcase your UI talents as well, and then your coding standards as well. As Amog was saying, if it's freelance, it's fine. They just want they see your UI talents there. That's what is required. But if you're applying for a company and all, that's they see beyond just the looks of your app. They see how well you write testable, maintainable code. So that for that there is something called software architectures, and there is this thing buzzword called MVVM coming up for the past couple of years. So you might need to look into that and stuff. I mean, I'm talking about native Android development. This is not hybrid like Flutter or React Native. So you have to get going on that, and then you will eventually get into this professional field over here or there.
So, Yashwant, you mentioned something interesting, like about the UI part. And I think all of us have been, I think all of us have at least one app in the Play Store by now. So, to actually get it to that point, have you guys had any interesting experiences with the designers? I'll let you know mine after you tell me yours.
So yeah, so from college days, I used to work with designers, and yeah, we used to have a lot of things. So because these designers always have this thing where they look at all fancy design. I mean, the early stage designers who have a very fancy way of designing stuff, they'll be like, dude, why is this not possible? This is there in that app, this is there in that app, this app, and all. They used to say that, and iOS designs used to come in between Android devices for them, and then so yeah, that sort of things happen with designers, and then material design is something that we all get used to, and then they will be like totally giving something off the book, and it's a bit sometimes you might get into a small fight with them, and then you settle things up and stuff like that happens. That happens even in big companies, not just with student designers. I'm just saying. What about you guys, Siddharth, Ritik, Amol?
Yeah, I think it happens with every one of us. Like designers have a different thought process. We have a different thought process. Like we think through code, right? So like how we want to develop it through code, we think like that. And then the designers have some fancy sense of UI, which causes a bit of trouble. So yeah, that's that, and that issue is always going to be there. And we also have to like have some kind of compromise to get the app going. What about you, Ritik?
Just to add in a small point here, I think sometimes, like many times, especially when you're working on like a small project in communities such as clubs, chapters, there might be miscommunication. So you might tell the designers some things, or like basically you think from the point of an app, and for a person who has no experience in building an app, might not think about these specific things, like especially the UX of maybe how the user might interact. So maybe like we might need to make our communication better to solve these problems. Or what do you guys think?
So actually,
So
I have a pretty interesting experience in this regard. So if you guys didn't know, I also do a bit of design on the side. Like I do illustrations, 3D modeling, UI design, of course, since I'm a developer. So that leads to even more friction, if that's possible. So the story comes from when I was building a product for a freelance job. And so we had a designer in our team, but even I was actually getting involved because I wanted to put my thoughts across as a developer and a designer, and that led to quite a bit of back and forth arguments, stuff like that, and eventually we had to reach a healthy compromise. But I think that just goes on to show how valuable design and UI UX experience is from a developer standpoint, because i think I think companies are also looking for developers who are experienced in that sort of thing. Don't you think, Yashwant?
Yeah, actually, it's a really important point. Designers just can't blindly keep designing. They have to know because they work with, I mean, their work is being used by developers, so they have to know their stakeholders. And definitely, so that's one example. It's like one of my friend is doing a design higher studies. So the very first syllabus that he's getting is how to build apps and how to build websites and stuff. So that is really important for them to understand what is feasible, how hard it is, and stuff like that. So yes, that's important. I mean, in a professional level, that is a plus point, but that is something that you eventually get.
Hmm.
The
And
juniors, they don't expect it, but the
right,
seniors, they
right.
expect. Yeah.
So I think one of the most interesting ways you can get into design, or the easiest, if I'd like to say, is actually material design. So material design is a set of UI guidelines and principles that was created by Google for their own apps, but then they made it open for everyone to use. And you guys can actually find it at material.io. There's a set of components for mobile, web, tablets, all the devices out there. So I think that's a pretty easy and straightforward way for a beginner developer to get into UI design?
Yashwant, are you using material design in Zomato right now? I mean, is it like
Yes, okay, material design. So the thing is, if it's Android, it's got to be material design. It's like everyone uses Android. I mean, people who use Android devices, the other apps also use kind of a material design. They got used to it. So whatever design system we use, so we have to have some kind of material aspect on top of it. And specifically talking about the material design library, I'll tell you an interesting thing. So in Zomato, we have a design system ourselves, made by us, our designers. It's called Sushi Design System. So for implementing that in Android, so we built a Sushi Android library used internally in Zomato. The underlying components of Sushi is basically material design. So I'll explain what that is. For example, beginners out there, if you like go to any XML file and then if you add in a button there, so if you go to the source code of it, you will find some button. So same way, material design official Google library gives a button. So we just extend that to build a design system on top of it. So indirectly, we do use material design. It's kind of become inevitable to not to use because it provides a lot of pre-built components and it has a lot of customization as well. So it's really easy to build upon stuff. Actually, in more than just native development, I believe in terms of, I mean, in case of Flutter and all, I guess it's really helpful that material design would be really helpful, isn't it? So if you guys could answer how in hybrid development material design is helping you, it would be great.
Yeah, so in my case, I have used a lot of material components. So like Flutter is like based on material. So like all of the components over there are material specific. So and it's easy to like extend that. That's exactly correct. So I was developing a freelance project where same thing, just as maybe sushi design, I extended it to some of my components and like developed a customized UI for that. What about you, Amok?
Yeah, so even I've been working with Flutter, and I think customizing is really easy compared to native Android at the moment. But there's a little something called Jetpack Compose, which I think we'll talk about later in the podcast. But suffice it to say that it makes customizing UI components much easier on native Android as well. Actually, that was quite a lot of talk about design. So that just reminds me, what are your favorite apps actually out there? Like based on both UI, UX, how you feel when just using it, how cool it is. I think my
So
favorite
for
app,
me,
I think my
yeah, go on,
favorite
go on.
app is Telegram. It's like super well designed and it's really fluid. And I think the animations are top notch and they're all available even on the oldest Android devices, which is typically not a thing. So the Telegram team has done some fantastic work on porting all the features back to like the oldest Android versions, like before KitKat and stuff like that. So that's why it's my favorite app. Yeah, go ahead, Ritik. You were saying?
Yeah, so I was just saying that nowadays, like the standards of Android apps are so high that every single company is trying to achieve their best and launch an app which will be the best in terms of design and UX. So, but personally, I feel for me, like the three favorite apps are like Netflix, InShot, and Spotify because these all have great functionality and their UIs are amazing.
I think for me, like I like I like Telegram app, and I think I like Spotify's web player more than the app. Like it feels kind of bulky.
That's actually because this Spotify app was wait, coming. Do you mean the app is bulky or the web player is bulky?
I mean, the app is bulky, and the web player is actually pretty smooth.
That's surprising considering that the web technologies are typically heavier than Android. So, shout out to you, Spotify. There, you guys need to step up your app game. We are looking out for you.
So then Spotify, I've seen a few people from Spotify tweet about something very like not so recently, but then they have some kind of a weird architecture, not weird, I should say, some complex architecture to, bring in the design consistency between iOS and Android. I guess they have some hybrid technology inside, which makes us feel like it's not so intuitive as a native, although being it's a native. So if that's the case, it's Spotify. And so if you ask me what my favorite apps are, like definitely Telegram, hands down. So it's like you just have to use it to experience it. Like words can't match it among all the apps I've used. And there's one more app that I recently used. It's called Opera Touch. It's a web browser. It even won some best UX awards or something. Like it's very nice to use it in one hand mode, and it has a lot of cool stuff in it. The UI is or UX is something that is totally reimagined on how you uh, do mobile web browsing and all. So you guys might want to check that out. I
Oh,
like that one.
I think one thing common across all the responses is Telegram. So props
Yep.
to you guys. Telegram, you did a great job. Keep it up. Right. So what do you think? We guys have different backgrounds in like Flutter, native Android, and even some web technologies. So what do you think? Which platform should we actually choose when building a new project? Yashwant has the most experience here, so I'll ask him to go first.
Good experience.
Of course, you're a super senior.
Okay.
I'm gonna ask you everything first.
Got it. Got it. Okay. So I don't know if that is like I'm saying like formula or something for you to choose something like flowchart, not that kind of thing. It's kind of a logical thing to think about. If you're planning to do some freelancing, of course, we talked about this earlier in this podcast as well. So just remember, if you're doing freelancing, yes, go with hybrid technologies because less manpower, more output. You get one guy coding, and you get both the apps for iOS and Android. Both you get it. So that is that. And if suppose you are coming to some like this business world where you get into companies and you want to do that, and you want to know that you need to know that people still use native Android development, and it's not going away anytime soon. So you might need to focus a lot on native development, that to specifically uh, like learning architectures, like some advanced concepts, going deep dive into OS internals and like how stuff works and everything you need to know. That is for the professional side. For freelancing, it's different. So if you guys want to add anything, you can add.
Okay, so Amog, what do you actually prefer for freelance? I think you do a lot of freelance these days.
Yeah, so I actually prefer native as much as possible. I'll recommend native to the client and I'll try to get that across, but typically they usually just want Flutter, and in the end, of course, you have to do what the client wants. So I most of the times, like 90% of the times, I end up making a Flutter app, but still my first priority is like getting the client to understand the advantages of building a native app over um, like something using Flutter. And if it is actually only for maybe one platform, like they only want to build for Android, then I'll really try to push it because it's much easier to just use native for a single platform if you're doing that. At least that's my opinion. What about you, Ritik? I mean, I think you've done some cool internships. Can you talk about like what they wanted there?
Yeah. So let's just say like I've done a few freelance projects too, and like you prefer native for it, but on the contrary, I think I prefer Flutter for freelance work because I mean their UI designs are sometimes a little too complex and they do not exactly stick to material as such. So for that, prefer Flutter as the UI can be made much more quickly compared to a native as per now. And again, as we said before, that it's gonna change pretty soon because of Jetpack Compose. And yeah, coming back to the question, yeah, I've done one internship till now. It was for an edtech startup called Vinual. So my experience there was pretty good. The team was small at that time, but we were working on a native Android app, and the code base was medium to large scale. So I gained a lot of experience, like seeing how the Android code base is like in a big company. What about you, Siddharth?
Yeah, so I was going to ask you both a question. Like, did you find Flutter to be production ready? So, like, uh, can you recommend Flutter to people like going for production, or maybe would you recommend Jetpack Compose someone?
So, coming to that, number one, your answer to your Flutter question, I'd say yes. Flutter is production ready for small apps that you want to get out there and be cross-platform, but maybe not for like apps that you need to deploy at very large scale, like something like maybe something like Zomato. But like we are seeing more of this trend that Google is trying to shift some of its apps towards Flutter. Like in the case of Google Play and the Stadia app, they're trying to switch to Flutter. But if you guys have used that beta, you know how stuttery and laggy it is. So it's kind of hard to get like the optimal performance from a Flutter app if it's really huge. But I'd say it's okay for building small to medium level projects. For your second question about Jetpack Compose, um, let us just introduce our audience to what Jetpack Compose is if they're not familiar with it. So, Jetpack Compose is like a declarative framework for building user interfaces in Kotlin. And if that just went over your head, don't worry, it went over mine too when I first heard about it. So, as of now, we build user interfaces inside Android with XML, and then we control the behavior, like all the logic is written in Java or Kotlin. So that's like a split between two different languages, and it can be annoying sometimes. And it just leads to a lot of a lack of developer productivity. So Google decided, okay, we're gonna make like everything in Kotlin, and that's what they did with Jetpack Compose. So it's like really new. It's a library which is in alpha right now, but you can go check it out. It's available for everyone. Um, and I would say that even Jetpack Compose is production ready for small apps, not and it's on the same level as Flutter was maybe a year ago in terms of readiness. But mostly it is stable in terms of UI, and I'd recommend everyone who's like trying to be an Android dev to go and check it out, because that's going to be like the de facto standard in Android development in the coming years.
And how does it compare to something like Kotlin multi-platform, where like the business logic is written in Kotlin, but then you have the UI written in the native language of that platform?
So since Kotlin multi-platform is like really new, I haven't had much experience with it. Can you elaborate on this, Yashwant?
The same for me. I haven't experienced. I mean, I haven't did anything about Kotlin multi-platform, but I would definitely say it's gaining a lot of traction nowadays. So it's like, the, for example, when Kotlin before Google picked up Kotlin, everyone some of them were using Kotlin. It wasn't that familiar, but then when Google picked it up, when Google started supporting, everyone like jumped into it because big companies backing it. So the same way Kotlin multi-platform, now Netflix has used that in one of their projects. So basically, they used to write the core business logic there. For example, they use this library called for network KTOR. Yeah, I forgot. So KTOR they use, and then they use some SQL library, ORM and stuff. So that they do all this network and data layer and business logic stuff in Kotlin multi-platform. And then just the UI of it is done in native parts, and that's how they do it in Kotlin multi-platform thing compared to like in place of Flutter or any other place. So let's say it might take off a bit. I mean, there are still a lot of room to improve that, but the progress is good, I'd say, in place of Kotlin
That's
multi-platform.
actually pretty interesting. It's like the exact opposite of Flutter in the sense
Mm.
that when you want to interact with the platform stuff in Flutter, you have to write native code. Like on if you want to access the Android camera, you have to write code in Java or Kotlin, and if you want to access iOS camera, you have to write it in Objective C or Swift. But it's the exact opposite in Kotlin multi-platform. Like all the business logic is in Kotlin, but the UI is written in the native languages. So I think that's a pretty stark contrast. And yeah, yeah.
Generally speaking about it, it's like everything is an experimental phase. Both, I guess, in both the kind of systems that you were mentioning, it still needs a lot of maturity, I believe, to everyone to get it to mainstream. So that's my take on it.
Oh, by the way, Fun fact about Jetpack Compose, guys. Um, but coming to that, I'll just ask you guys a question first. Do you know how Flutter actually renders thing onto the screen?
Yeah, I guess it uses the rendering library called Skia, right? If I'm not wrong.
Yeah. So Skia is like a really high performance 2D graphics library, which is used for drawing onto the screen by Flutter. And why it is used is because in typical Android apps, you the apps actually use the views provided by the system. So view is like a single component of a um, user interface. So in a typical Android app, native Android app, the system provides the views to the app, and the app just moves them around, re-renders them, stuff like that. Now, clearly, this isn't possible in Flutter because it has to support multiple platforms. So you can think of it as like a game. Like it's like a game engine, which is just drawing shapes onto your screen, and that's the reason it can actually work across multiple platforms. So the fun thing about Jetpack Compose that I was coming to is that Jetpack Compose also uses the Skia library for rendering its UI. And even better is that Skia is available on every single Android version out there. I'm sure you know what this means, Yashwant.
Every single Android version is something really big thing to do because when you run a when you build an app, you have to really make sure about covering a big user base. So yeah, that is really a big plus point. I mean, after working in companies and everything, I see that people strive a lot to support lower end devices. So when it comes out of the box, you just leverage it and stay happy.
So, what are the platforms that Zomato actually supports? Like, what are the Android versions? I've been curious about that.
Okay, so if you talk about Zomato, there are three apps. One is the app that you use to order, and one is the app that the restaurant people use to accept the orders, and one is the app that the delivery guys use to uh, give like, comment. They used to, that's the app just gives out the wrong location every time you order, and you guys keep complaining about. So the least supported version in all three apps is Lollipop as of now, and yeah, that is it.
Okay.
They
Mhm. So, I think I have an interesting story here to share, but would you guys like to go first, Ritik? I mean, you guys are like closer to our audience right now in terms of experience, so maybe that will be more engaging for them. Could you go ahead?
Uh, what exactly, Amog? Just
Yeah, so I
carry
meant
on.
like, do you have any interesting experiences about developing Android? Maybe in a hackathon, maybe in a freelance project, just something out there.
Hmm. So from this, you asked two questions. Do I have experience developing apps and hackathon? So there's this really cool experience I had where I had to develop an app during an hackathon while also working on the project for the hackathon itself. So this was for the app I was working on. This was my first project in DSC. It was Athena, and Athena was an app used for helping women during their period to basically help them in receiving the sanitary products from each other, so they could communicate and basically coordinate with each other depending on their location, right? So this project was really complicated and overwhelming for me as it was my first project, and it involved a lot of stuff like chats and using location from devices. And that time I didn't even know what a API was, I mean what a backend was. And this project, I used MVVM, as Yashwant Bhai had mentioned about the architectures. MVVM is a type of an architecture, so it's a pretty complex architecture. I mean, now that I think of it, doesn't sound so complex because I've worked with it. But at that time, it was pretty complex for me. So all this was going on, and I had a deadline to submit this project as it had to be launched on Women's Day. So, and at the exact same day when this deadline was there, there was a hackathon going on. So I was participating in the hackathon, and then people start finding too many bugs in my app, and I start getting calls that fix this, fix that. So then I'm like working on an app for the hackathon and working on this app at the same time because of the deadline. So yeah, this was my story. What about you guys? Do you guys have some stories?
Yeah, so mine is actually not an experience of building an app, but mine is about actually attending, let's say, a talk given by Yashwant's mentor when he was interning in Redbus. Do you remember him, Yashwant?
Yeah, his name is Dinesh Shanmugam, and now he is in Gojek.
Okay. Yeah, so he'd come to give a talk at VIT actually about Android and how apps scale. So naturally, I was there to attend. And one of the things that he said really stuck with me, and it has influenced all the decisions that I make about my apps right now. What he said was that for every 1 MB increase in your app size, you are losing out on a potential 1 million downloads or 1 million users, and that's a huge number. So I was really influenced, and from then on, like, I strive to keep my app size to the minimum. um, do you actually do that at Zomato, Yeshwant?
Oh yeah, that is strictly followed here. App size. So I'll just do things that are strictly followed here. App size and crashes. So app size, as you mentioned, the statistics, it's like every 1% increase, you lose a lot of uh, business and all. Yes, that is definitely true for whatever app which is on scale. So one of the interesting things we do here is like when you raise a PR, so they basically what they do is they build an APK from your branch, and they build it from the dev branch. Okay, I'm so sorry. So I'll explain what a PR is. It's called a pull request. So basically, when there is one repository in GitHub, where we have the code base, when you're working on it, you will create a new branch out of it, and then you make all your changes, and you give a pull request so that all your changes are in the actual code base. So basically, when you're giving this pull request, what they do is they make an APK of your version, and then they make the APK of existing version. They compare it, and if your version is exceeding by 100 KB, then your code is not accepted. Either you find a place where you can reduce the size, or you yourself in your own code reduce the size and give the app, give the pull request. That is another thing. And crashes. So I mean, just a few days back, there was that our analytics team told us that for every one crash, we are losing 0.2% of users every day. I mean, for one crash, we're losing 0.2%. And if this is the scale which are going within like 1 month, we'd be using a significant percentage of our audience. I mean, our target users, I should say. So app size and crashes are really important things to consider when you're putting an app in Play Store.
Oh, okay. That's some insight into like the workings of the company that even I didn't have. That's pretty interesting. I think we are at that point in our podcast where we can start taking questions from our audience. So you guys just start asking questions in the live stream chat, and we'll answer them the best we can. All right. So the very first question, which was actually asked a while back, was which software I use for 3D object designing, 3D modeling. Right. So you're familiar with Blender, right? That's exactly the same thing I use. I use Blender, and I really love how mature it has become over the ages. I know this is not really related to Android, but let's go ahead with it anyway because you're curious. So yeah, I use Blender, and I have followed its journey from like version 2.6 to where it is now, which is version 2.91, and it has become so mature and so much more stable, and it's become really professional right now. And that's the thing I love most about it, as well as the fact that it's free and open source. So yeah, that's what I use for designing my 3D objects. Yashwant, you have a question. They're asking you whether you've worked on any Zomato features that you might have seen in the app, and they're super curious. Are you at liberty to disclose anything?
Okay, that's it. I mean, I built features for you guys to use it only, so I think I can say that. So that's not an issue. So there are So right now I'm working on the restaurant app team. So you might not have actually seen that app, but then there were times when I used to work on the consumer app, in the sense the app that we used to order food as well. So there were two main features that I worked on there. One is called feed, which just got removed yesterday, and
Or
another thing was yeah, that really happens a lot in companies. They experiment with a lot of new features. They see if it's working out or not, and then they remove it if it doesn't. And yeah, I mean, if they can, then they will. So yeah, that got removed yesterday, and you can't see it. And another one I worked on is called quick links. That got removed last month, so that also you can't see. But there are some things you can see. uh, in the Zomato homepage, you can see that thing where there'll be a lot of food items shown, and you can click see more to expand. So that actually was built by me and another person. We architected it together. So that is something like in the homepage that you can see that which I have worked on. And actually, when I was there, whatever I worked was remote. So I'm sorry, Nainika. I think I killed your curiosity there. I'll let you
Is
know when
there,
I work on something else.
yeah, is there
okay,
anything coming soon that like in Zomato that we should be like uh, aware of, like any new features or something?
Okay,
Are
that
you
I
allowed to
couldn't
answer
say.
that? Okay.
Let that be a surprise to you.
all right.
All right.
So Sai Tarun Palakula is asking whether it's possible to add Jetpack Compose to existing projects. Yes, very much so. Google actually gave this a lot of thought when they were building it, and they made sure that Jetpack Compose can be used independently of any existing XML UIs that you might have. And so you don't need to like completely overhaul the app at once. You can slowly start converting each screen into Jetpack Compose, and that's a really great forethought by the Android team. At the big props to them.
Amok, have you tried any app in Jetpack Compose?
Yes, actually. So, a bit of plug here. So, Ritik has an app in the Play Store called Easy Gists, which allows you to view um, your GitHub gists and see them and edit them and stuff like that. So, I wanted to create a Jetpack Compose version, which I'm currently working on. So, guys, check that out. And when I build a Jetpack Compose version, we'll publish that as well, and maybe even add it as an update to Ritik's app. So, just stay tuned.
Okay, we have another question here from Shantanu. He's asking any pointers on bagging an app dev internship. So I guess Yaswant is the most experienced of us, so like he can answer this one.
Yeah, cool. So as I was saying before, app dev internship, it's like okay, so basically what happens is when you're in the first year or second year, don't worry about what company you go, what you do. It's just for experience. I mean, you need some experience to tell to other people that you have done internship. So you can go for small startups and all. Don't think like uh, they they would do something like a freelance thing, and then they would tell you as an internships. Don't worry about that. If you first year and second year, it's fine. Be happy that you got an internship. But when you're coming for third year, that is when things change. If you're good, I mean, my experience is that I can tell you about places like I've been to Red and Zomato, so I can tell you about this mid-range kind of a startup. So if you're going to go there, there are a lot of things. First of all, you need to have in your resume so that you can be shortlisted. As I said before, at least one app in Play Store, please. And that really does make a lot of difference. One page resume is a must, because the same Dinesh Shanmugam guy that I was mentioning before. So when we were in Redbus, I used to see him. He got a resume which was 2 page. He didn't even see. He just move past to the next one. I know it's biased, but this exists in industry. That can't be changed. So have a one-page resume. That'd be awesome. So and what else is that? Yeah. So if you're going for industry, it's really important to know industry standard stuff as like architectures that we've been talking about. And if you know testing, that's a huge thing. So if suppose we have time, just get to know about unit testing, how you can use RoboElectric, and that's it's all libraries. I'm just testing. I mean, I'm just telling you. You can Google those things later on. I'm just saying, code testing, unit testing, and stuff. It is something really helpful. So if you have these things, and if you have a couple of hackathons that you have attended, and if you have won something, it's better to put that as well. So once you have got this resume thing right, so you can get. So now comes the important part where you reach out to people. LinkedIn is the like one of the best place and the only place which is available for you to go reach out to people who can really get you into an internship. So that is actually one like series of steps that I used to follow for getting internship. One is first find out engineering managers in a company. So most of this mid-range startups or even companies where they have an Android team, that they uh, have this engineering managers. So I am asking you to start out with engineering managers, because even if you go and ask out in HR, however your resume goes into this company, so HR people make the decision with the help of engineering managers. So you directly go and ask engineering managers, you have higher chances of getting into a company. And if engineering managers are not helping you, you might need to go on with the senior software developers, and then go on to the junior software developers. And they sometimes, if you directly go to HR, they might not really value your profile as much as the software developers do, so they can push your resume a bit more forward. And after that, if none of them are working out, of course it's the HR people that you need to go on and ask. So these are the things that can help you land a good internship in app development.
Wow.
Wow,
Okay.
that was
Yeah, that
very
was
interesting.
so detailed, and man, I didn't know half the things on there, and I think I'll have to keep all this in mind when I apply for an internship, which is going to be pretty soon, considering I'm in fourth year. So thanks for that, Yashwant. I think that coming to that, we are nearing the end of our podcast here. If you guys have any more questions, we'll just wait for a few minutes. Otherwise, we'll start wrapping up. In the meantime, any Zomato referral giveaways, Yashwant?
Will give away. Uh,
Yeah,
if you
actually,
guys can make a yeah, tell me.
do you get any
Amol?
coupons from Zomato actually?
Oh, uh, no. Even the Zomato Gold I had to buy myself. But yeah, I mean, they're like, we have a lot of people, dude. We are not giving away Zomato Gold or something to people. And by the way, Zomato Gold got renamed to Zomato Pro. I'm just saying, Zomato Pro I had to buy for myself, and nah, I'm not getting any coupon. So they're like, we are unbiased like that.
So, how is your experience been in Zomato up till now?
Uh, it's been really awesome, I should say. The thing is, the engineering team is so good, and there are a lot of young faces here. So we have this work hard, play hard kind of a culture. So there used to be times when I mentioned feed. If you remember, I was working on this project called Social Feed. When we used to do that project, I used to even work on Saturday and Sunday going to office. Well, that's not a typical office. Zomato has its own uh, kind of guest house somewhere there in Gurgaon. It is so awesome. It has swimming pool. It's like a dream house that everybody wants to have. So we used to go there and we used to chill and work there. So that and all was nice. And then the we have this architecture called server driven UI. So that is something which was really interesting and amazing to look at and learn about it. So that's about it. My experiences in Zomato.
Mhm. Okay, so MD Hisham Akhtar is asking, is Kotlin as relevant as Java? So that's kind of a loaded question. There's many people out there who prefer Java over Kotlin, but I myself, and I think all of us here together compared to Java, we prefer Kotlin because it's such an improvement over Java in the syntax, the safety, the developer experience, and just the overall ecosystem. And I think one of the biggest plus points of Kotlin is that it is 100% compatible with Java. Like you can call Java code from Kotlin and you can call Kotlin code from Java. So that's the biggest plus point that I find. And combined with all the other features that it has, it just makes it an outstanding language for like completely replacing Java wherever you actually need to. So in my opinion, Kotlin is way more relevant than Java.
Yeah, I think that answers this question pretty well. And as we are wrapping up, I guess one last question I'll ask you guys is, what would you suggest to a new beginner who might be watching our podcast right now to start with native and Flutter respectively? So I guess Yashwant Bhai can answer the native question and Siddharth can answer the Flutter. So maybe like some tips, which I mean, instead of just saying that, look at the docs or something, maybe something uh, some specific tips that helped you to get started and reach to the point where you are now.
Cool. So I'll start with the native development part of it. So for native development, you could start off with as simple as a Udemy course. So I mean, I started with the Udemy course, but I'd highly recommend the Udacity course. It's a bit time taking and all, I know, but still, if you learn it from that, you'll really start enjoying it. Not just because of the way they teach it, it's awesome, but still, uh, Udacity teaches it in a way that you'll fall in love with Android development. So it's like that. So maybe for Flutter, how did you get started, Siddharth?
Yeah, I also began with the the Udemy course, but then I would suggest one thing, a tip, like pay attention to the structure. Like in Flutter, it might get cluttered because you're writing the UI declaratively. So this is one thing like which I realized pretty late. So like you should pay attention to structure and like learn some state management, code structuring and state management. I think will agree on this.
Yeah, I definitely agree on this. And I think like when I first started Flutter, I was actually repulsed by, to me at that time, how ugly the code looked. But slowly I've gotten used to it. And I think the major part of that was like the code I wrote just wasn't that good compared to what it's supposed to be. And code management and architecture, using good architectures in whichever framework you're using, is fundamental to building an app which can be maintained and can keep running for a long time. Keep running as in the Play Store and be downloaded by people. That's what I mean. But I think since there's no more questions, we'll wrap up here. Thank you, guys, for attending the podcast. Thanks for answering our questions, Yashwant, from a um, pro industry leader. I mean, from a pro industry worker's perspective. Thank you, guys, Siddharth and Ritik, for joining and answering
Uh,
about questions from the perspective of maybe people who are comparatively newer to the field. And thank you to your audience for joining us today. Oh,
okay,
we
before
got
we go,
one
we have
final
one last
question.
question.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, go ahead,
So
answer
which
it, sir.
state management do I use? So I actually prefer block and I try out get also getx package, but then I prefer block over any other state management for Flutter.
That's interesting. I personally use Provider myself, but I've been meaning to learn Block because it's pretty similar to how the MVVM architecture is on native Android. But yeah, anyway, time to end the stream.